Well, with Dunkley out of the way, the next by-election is for Scott Morrison's old Sydney seat of Cook, and the Liberals last night pre-selected Simon Kennedy as their candidate. And for both major parties, the focus now is on the lead up to the federal budget and the fight to frame the narrative. Is this a government that gets it, that's listening and acting on the concerns of Middle Australia, or is it a government that's out of touch? Joining me now for his analysis, as he does every Tuesday, Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Well, Andrew, great to have your company. Good to see you on Saturday night. I was thinking over the coverage on Sunday and in the wash-up in the print media. One thing that struck me, and you said this on Saturday night, is how dangerous it would be for Labor, regardless of the margin, that they were out there, that they were cocky. I think the word you said, that they would become unbearable after this win. Now, we saw warnings today from the unions and old-time party elders saying, out of the weekend's result, you know, they got through, yes. They had a swing to them, yes. That's a signal to get back to basics, not just talk about cost of living, but actually do something tangible about it. I think this is a challenge for Labor. Let's see how they go. But are you getting a sense that they're humble in this victory, or are they cocky as you feared?
Oh, look, people were saying to me you won't see any hubris from this government, but behind the scenes you might. And I think that was the point I made to you off camera, that I've seen this in many governments of many persuasions, that they get a few wins up and, a fair bit of hubris comes into play. So they've got to guard against that, because there's a long way to go before the next election, and they did get a swing against them.
Are they focused on the budget? Are they focused enough on delivering practical outcomes, you know, stuff that people can see and feel and touch on the ground in terms of relief?
Well, some mixed messages on that, aren't there? I mean, Jim Chalmers seems to be telling journalists, well, there will be some cost of living relief, but we won't be going over the top. Inflation's tempering. We'll get GDP figures tomorrow. I would have thought it's probably time to flick the switch a little bit. I know he wants a surplus, but I think you've got to give some relief, especially in the energy bill space. And, we had a health insurance rise today, which was very convenient, wasn't it? It's like 2 days after the by-election, they finally waved that through. So that sucks up a lot of your tax cut. They've still got a lot of issues. That tax cut thing obviously worked. They had a reasonably good result, I think. They could have lost after all. They could have copped a bigger swing. But they need to show that they are doing things about cost of living, that they're working hard towards that, and hope that their economic policies are sound enough that we can see some rate cuts by the end of the year.
Olivia just played some material there from the opposition leader, Peta Credlin, and I mentioned the fact that he shuffled around his front bench today. Minor in terms of movements. He replaced Stuart Robert. He's now long gone. He's brought in Luke Howarth, another Queenslander, to move into that outer ministry portfolio. But I think the most critical play here was the replacement of Maurice Payne as Shadow Cabinet Secretary with, I think, the very impressive James Patterson. I made the point back in the Nelson, Turnbull, Abbott era, I did the job of the Shadow Cabinet Secretary, as well as the Chief of Staff and other things. But, I mean, why this role is so important in opposition is it's the sort of the clearinghouse of all the policy. It drives the shadow ministers to actually get their documents done, get them in, costed, work them through the system, get the backbench support for it, etc. Now, getting rid of Payne, who was in the departure lounge, putting someone ambitious like Patterson in the job, I reckon that says he's serious.
Yeah, I think we're so far inside the beltway here, I can't even see the cars on the road, Peter. But I know what you mean. It's a machinery change. And machinery is important for what you do with politics. And James Patterson's worked hard, and by promoting him, he's showing the other shadows, if you work hard, you'll get rewards. But ultimately, he hasn't made any big moves at the top end. And, he has the right to do that. He doesn't want to upset people too much, I suspect. And he's brought someone in like Andrew Bragg, who could probably be a troublemaker after Dunkley, and he's brought in Melissa Matheson, who faces a pre-selection challenge, as if to say to the New South Wales Liberal Party, she's won Lindsay a couple of times, for goodness sake, don't be stupid, pre-selector. So all of that's pretty interesting in the mix, but I don't think they're talking about this around the kitchen tables or the dining tables tonight.
No, but if you don't get your machinery right, if you don't get your right team on the field, if you're not doing the policy work, we get to election day and people say, geez, the coalition should have done more, or the costings were buggered up, or, you know, they missed an opportunity in a particular policy area. So, you know, you can't fatten that pig on market day, as John Howard used to say. And if they want to start writing policies for the next election, I mean, that started yesterday, if they're serious. So I think putting him in there says they're serious.
Well, I think it has.
On someone like the PM.
Peter, I think they have several policies ready to go. My understanding is they have the housing policy ready to go. They're obviously, as we revealed today, quite a long way along the way in terms of the nuclear policy. So they have been doing the work, is my understanding. There's an immigration policy ready to go. They're on the way, at least, to presenting some decent alternatives at the next election.
I think you're a bit more optimistic than I am, but we'll see what happens when I catch up with a few people. Does this put pressure on the Prime Minister, though? I mean, he's got Andrew Giles, who sits out there as an obvious candidate who should be moved on. Do you think he's going to have the ticket to do that before the budget?
I don't think it'll be happening before the budget. I think it'll be later in the year. And that will come from retirements, etc. Linda Burney, I don't know if Mark Dreyfus wants to go. That's when I expect that to occur. He probably thinks the way he's going, I mean, he just won the by-election, that he can leave Giles there for the time being. The problem they're going to have is if one of these detainees commits a serious criminal offence, and it's going to be a big problem. So, you know, I'd be, I think I've said this on your program before, I'd be working pretty hard to at least get a couple of applications up so that you're seen to be doing something about that issue.
Well, I think if you're the opposition, you keep Giles there as long as you possibly can. You don't want the Prime Minister to move him on. Hey, you had some detail out today, exclusive detail about the opposition's plans in relation to nuclear. A bit more of a sense of how many nuclear power stations we're talking about, where they might be. What can you tell us?
Well, this is very ambitious, isn't it? They're going to identify 5 or 6 sites that could have nuclear reactors. And they're going to say, we're going to lift the moratorium. It has to get through shadow cabinet, of course, but it seems Peter Dutton's pretty hell-bent on doing it. And 5 or 6 sites, New South Wales, Victoria and beyond. And I think they're all going to be former coal-fired power sites, or ones that have been or are being decommissioned. So you can think about Liddell and Bayswater in the Hunter Valley, and then it's the Latrobe Valley, isn't it? Your Lorne and Loy is just a few options for them. And perhaps Collie in Western Australia, who knows? So, look, this is pretty courageous stuff, isn't it? I mean, I know the polling shows it's popular amongst young people, but I think you said something in your intro which is very true. They want a fight. They want to have a fight over an issue. Now, they think this transmission idea, thousands and thousands of kilometres of power poles going out to support renewables, isn't the right course, isn't going to fix the problem, and is unachievable in terms of the greenhouse targets. So they're daring Anthony Albanese and saying, well, we can do it through nuclear. Albanese will launch a scare campaign off the back of that. We suddenly have a very interesting contest coming up for the next election after what last time was a pretty small target election on both sides, it has to be said. But the last time someone took an ambitious agenda... And all those Labor right unions too. Yeah, so, well, that's true. AWU will support it. But the last time someone took an ambitious agenda to an election didn't end so well, so we'll see.
Just really quickly, I mean, Simon Kennedy named last night as the Lib candidate for Cook. PM pretty cagey about whether Labor will even run in Cook. What do you think? Seem pretty cagey about what? Sorry, I just had someone in my ear then. Seem pretty cagey about... Cagey about running in Cook. Labor running in Cook. Oh, they're not going to run. I don't think they'll run. I was told last week it was highly unlikely. I don't think they'll waste the resources, Peter.